School Mind by Triads 101, Theory, Structure, and Function. Hi chicos and chicas, greetings from your science teacher, Mr. T, from your friendly JJ Center at Gardner Betts, Austin, ISD. Today we'll continue the series School Mind by Triads 101 with a presentation of Theory, Structure, and Function. It is very common in science to refer to the structure and function of a theory, or in more obtuse terms as the structural, functionalist, theoretical systems approach in science. But what, may I ask, does this all mean in common sense terms? Herein, we'll showcase how the complex explains away the complicated by way of the constitution of the triad. Exemplars abound, but let's take one in order to showcase the general in the particular. We've taken the instance of Chapter 7, Cell Theory and Structure, from our current high school freshman biology textbook. But the same is valid for college or research level biology on the same topic for that matter. To what exactly the structure and function refers to is never actually clarified in the text. It is taken as if already understood, and it is never mentioned again. In following, we'll try to illustrate what structure and function means in a theory by way of employing our power tool of the triads. For a more comprehensive explanation, we encourage the viewer to visit the series Temple Spirit by Triads 101, wherein the triads, properly speaking, are developed. Herein, we'll cut the chase and go straight to the conclusions. I'll just display a few slides and provide a quick explanation of each in turn. In following, we'll display the first slide, Universal as Unity in Diversity. We have the universal, or the concept is unity in diversity. And we represent this unity in diversity idea by way of the vertical, which is the imaginary where unity goes, which is the way the right brain sees things, or the perspective from the whole. On the real axis, or the horizontal, we will place diversity, which is the way the left brain looks at things, or the perspective from the parts. The universal, as c squared equals a squared plus b squared lets us in, means that the universal is a second story idea, which in this case corresponds to the midbrain, or the concept of the thing. On the bottom line, we have that the universal, or the second story, is made up of the real diversity plus the imaginary, or I, unity. In other words, the concept is second story, and it consists of the real parts plus the I, or the imaginary whole. In terms of brain, we would say that the midbrain captures the real left brain plus the imaginary right brain. We don't place the real, the R, because it's understood that there are two, horizontal and vertical, and the vertical is the imaginary, the horizontal would be the real. What the triad paradigm does is harmonize between unity and diversity. A thing that we consider as one, since we're naming it as such to begin with, can be equally viewed from the perspective of the whole as well as from the perspective of the parts. In other words, the right brain unity would be a perspective as seen from the whole, as it were, all the while the left brain diversity would be a perspective as seen from the parts of the thing in question, so to speak. Within this setup, the theory would then correspond to the midbrain, properly speaking. The short story is that structure corresponds to what holds the theory together as a whole, while function is what the parts supposedly do within the theory, within the whole setup. That is, that structure views things from the whole, while function views it from the parts, sort of complementary views such that together they comprise the universal, or the concept. The concept, or the universal, is understood as unity in diversity, hence the word universal. In our case in point, the whole's perspective would be the structure, the parts' perspective would be the function, all the while the whole and the parts, as unity in diversity, would be the concept of the theory. In following, we'll present the slide Theory as Structure and Function. In this slide, we summarize that theory is structure in function. We'll use a triad representation again, triad paradigm. On the imaginary vertical, we will place the structure. or the whole perspective corresponding to the right brain, as we said before. On the horizontal or real axis, we would put the parts perspective, in this case the function. And second story to these two, as c squared equals a squared plus b squared would signify, second story to structure and function would be the theory, properly speaking, or the concept of the thing, as captured by the midbrain. Underneath the lines, then, we summarize again. Theory, second story, is the real function plus the imaginary structure, or conversely, the second story universal composed of the real diversity plus the imaginary unity. And lastly, second story concept as constituted by real parts plus the imaginary whole. And we go back to the idea of second story midbrain equals the real left brain plus the imaginary whole brain, and so on. You get the idea by now. We have now explained how the theory, the structure, and the function go to make up a thing in its own right. But perhaps as it stands, it is too abstract. What we'll do in order to remedy things will be to go from the general explanation above to the particular presentation of cell theory as structure and function from biology. Of course, for a more comprehensive coverage of the topic, we encourage the viewer to visit the series School Mind by Triads 101 Cell Theory of Biology. In following, we now display the slide Cell, Structure, and Function. In the previous slide, we presented theory as structure and function in a very abstract manner. Now we're going to present it concretely in the case of biology cell theory, cell structure. So this corresponds to chapter 7, by the way, of cell structure and function of the biology textbook. On the vertical, as we said, is a structure corresponding to the spirit or the right brain of viewing things, which is the whole perspective of the whole. On the horizontal, the real would be the body, obviously, corresponding to the left brain view of things, of the parts, and it would be the function, properly speaking. On the second story would be the cell theory, in this case, corresponding to the mind, as we said, or the midbrain. Underneath the line, we would just summarize the same thing. The theory, second story, corresponds to the real function plus the imaginary structure, corresponding again to the second story mind equal to the body, which is real, obviously, plus the imaginary spirit, which is imaginary, definitely. And likewise, the midbrain, which is second story, corresponds to the real way of viewing things of the left brain plus the imaginary way of viewing things from the right brain. Again, this is very repetitious, so you get the idea by now. Thank you. Well, that's all, chicos and chicas. Our hope is that you keep watching the other videos of the series School Mind by Triads 101. One thing to keep in mind in this effort is that the different video series of School Mind by Triads and Temple Spirit by Triads 101 tend to help each other in the understanding of science. Thank you and have a good day. Muchas gracias.